Hi people, welcome along to a French Open preview video people. Obviously the second Grand Slam of the year is getting underway this weekend on Sunday in tennis, and thought I'd sit down and just take a look at how I see things mapping out ahead of this prestigious, lucrative tournament that's about to take place in the French capital. So, yeah, I mean, let's start off people with the women's actually, because we've got a situation where we've got a red hot favourite in the women's draw, Iga Swiatek of Poland. She's won 3 French Open titles, and she's also collected, I was doing my research earlier, 4 Masters 1000s this year from what I counted up. Sorry, 3 Masters 1000s. She's won in Rome and Madrid on the clay, beating Sabalenka both times in those finals. And she also won in Indian Wells on the hard courts earlier this year as well. So she really is a consistent player, relentless player, so repetitious with how she goes about her points, but also her preparation and her consistency across tournaments is just unrivaled at the moment. Clear world number 1 and head and shoulders the favourite in this women's singles draw. And it's going to take a real monumental effort for someone to throw down a challenge worthy enough to dethrone Swiatek. And you're looking at possibles, maybe Rybakina, who has been very good on the clay. She comes in as the 4th seed at this event, and she has beaten Swiatek before on clay, and she made the semi-finals in Madrid this year in the Masters 1000 event, and she also won Stuttgart, a WTA 500 event on clay as well. So she has got good form coming in, and the matchup with Swiatek would appear like, of the top players on clay, she's the most likely to potentially cause an upset to Swiatek. Then you look at Sabalenka, who obviously won the Australian Open this year, has won 2 Australian Opens, and did very well last year at the French Open as well, reaching the latter stages of that event. And as I just mentioned, she's made 2 Masters 1000 finals in the clay stretch here this calendar year. So you're looking at those 3 as the favourites, people. In terms of potentially who else could spring a challenge, you're looking at Danielle Collins, the 12th seed from the United States, who has had an incredibly transformative year this year. After struggling in 2023, she's really had an upturn in her form. Seemed to coincide with her announcing earlier this year that she would be retiring at the end of this season, and her results have just skyrocketed. She's won a couple of events. She, most notably, the Masters 1000 in Miami on the hard courts, beating Rybakina, who I just mentioned, in the final. She also won a clay event in the United States in Charleston, WTA 500. So she would come into this tournament with somewhat of a belief that she could potentially make a run. And if the draw opens up for her, you just never know. And Coco Gauff also, I think, is a worthy candidate, the number 3 seed. Obviously, she won the United States Open last year, and that was her first Grand Slam. She's made semis at Australia this year, and she's a very consistent performer. Obviously, to have reached the lofty position of 3rd seed, she's had an incredible last 12 months. So that's how I see it in the women's side, people. Those 5, I would expect the winner to come out from one of those, and I think Swiatek would be the safe bet, but you just never know how that's going to unravel. So that's how I see it, people, with regards to the women's draw. Now, I want to also turn my focus to the men's draw as well. And I can't remember, people, a Grand Slam that's been as interesting as this in a very long time, because you've got a situation here where the 14-time French Open champion Rafael Nadal is returning to Paris, having missed the tournament last year, in what could possibly be his last ever French Open. Now let that sink in, people. This is a guy who has won 14 Grand Slam Grand Slam events here at Roland Garros. Starting in 2005, I've literally got the list there on my laptop, people. And it's almost a case you need to scroll down from the first Roland Garros that he won in 2005 to his most recent in 2022. It's such a lengthy list of accolades. Like, you look at it, 2005, 2006, and then, so 2005 to 2008, he won 4 in a row. Then Federer won 1 in 2009. Then Nadal won from 2010 through to 2014. And then Wawrinka won in 2015, Djokovic in 2016. Then Nadal went on another 4 French Open streak, 2017 to 2020. Then Djokovic won in 2021, Nadal in 2022, Djokovic 2023. So it's just incredible. And in amongst all that, Djokovic has picked 3 up, which is pretty impressive given the fact Nadal's had such a stranglehold on the event. So, but the interesting aspect, people, about this is neither Djokovic nor Nadal would appear to be 100% at their most fluent, at their best coming into this tournament. And that's very rare for one of these two players not to be hitting a Grand Slam and almost feeling like they're the favourite. Like, it doesn't feel like, certainly Nadal, but even Djokovic would be the favourite given what's happened in 2024. Because I was, again, people, just looking through the results of Nadal and Djokovic this year. And starting with Nadal, obviously he started the season off pretty well in Brisbane, picked up a win, lost to Jordan Thompson of Australia, and then he pulled out of the Australian Open, came back for the clay court swing, and has won 5 matches on clay across 3 events, which is obviously not what we would normally expect from Nadal given his lofty standards on this surface, but it's still noteworthy that he has actually accrued 5 wins on this surface this year, so he has gotten up to speed, which is probably all he would have been looking for going into the French Open, because if he'd expended any more energy potentially getting to the latter stages of some of those events, Rome, Madrid, Barcelona, perhaps it would have compromised him physically. He might have picked up another injury, but as it happens, he'll come in with that balance of being prepared but also not depleted, which I think is where he wants to be going into this last slam of the year, this French Open, which may in effect be his last in Paris. He's going to want to give this maximum effort, and how he may have looked at it would have been, look, I just want to get to Roland Garros healthy and somewhat practiced and prepared in order to mount some kind of challenge. So as I said, people, 5 match wins on clay this year for Nadal, a round of 64 at Rome, round of 16 at Madrid, did really well there, and a round of 32 at Barcelona. But I was also looking at Djokovic's results this year, people, and he's 12th in the race, which is essentially, as you all know, the accumulative ranking points a player has amassed over the course of the calendar year to date. So it's January to May as we stand. So in those 5 months, Djokovic is the 12th ranked player. He's obviously the world number 1, but the race doesn't obviously consider what happened at the back end of last year, where Djokovic won French Open, US Open, and a host of other events. So, but this year Djokovic has won 12 matches, which, if you were to compare that with other seasons gone by, it doesn't stack up for Djokovic. He's not won a title, which is, by his standards, just unthinkable. And in amongst all that, his best showing, you'd say, would have been that Australian Open semi-final, where he lost out in the end to the winner, Jannik Sinner. So what sort of Djokovic are we going to see this year, people? Like, he's played this event, Geneva, in the week before Roland Garros, which again is very unusual for a top player to play in an ATP 250, a WTA 250, the week before a Grand Slam, because essentially at that point, the top players have done their prep, they've probably bagged a couple of titles in the lead-in, and they're just fine-tuning their preparation in that week before the event. But this time Djokovic is getting some matches under his belt, which is a really interesting decision. And I've been watching the highlights. He just beaten Talon Griekspoor of the Netherlands in the last 16 in Geneva, and he was looking pretty good again. I have to say, I think this week he's found some form, because obviously in Rome last tournament he had a few setbacks, not least when that water bottle hit him on the head when he was signing autographs courtside, and I think that did knock him back for his subsequent match, where he lost in the next round. So you would wonder, is this event, this Geneva event, priming Novak for a run at Roland Garros? And I think he is the favourite, people. As much as I say there's more doubt going into this event, because the reason I say that is because Alcaraz has also had his injury problems. Alcaraz, the third seed. He's also missed Rome, and I think he missed parts of Madrid as well. He certainly missed Rome with an injury. Sinner picked up a hip injury, I believe, in Madrid, had to pull out, and then he missed Rome. So there is a little bit of doubt about the other protagonists going into this tournament. And then you look at things, people, from the perspective of who else? Who are the next contenders, perhaps outside the normal candidates you'd expect to win a slam? You look at Zverev. So he's the number 4 seed. He's just won Rome. He's made the final at Roland Garros before 2022. But the curious aspect is Zverev is playing Nadal in the first round. So the draw obviously was done yesterday, and be it a twist of fate, because obviously Nadal is unseeded given his injuries that he's had this year. He's not been able to accumulate a seeding. And he's for Nadal fans, you're looking at that first round draw. It couldn't have been much worse from the point of view of a difficult opponent. I think Zverev he's in top form. He's a good clay courter. It's going to be difficult for Nadal, but also equally it's going to be difficult for Zverev, because you're playing against the 14-time winner at potentially their last event at the tournament they've dominated. Imagine the crowd are going to get behind Nadal. Nadal's going to be super intense and super motivated, as he always is, but perhaps a little bit extra in this tournament. So it's a nightmare draw for Zverev as well. So you're kind of looking at that one and thinking, is that going to take something out of Zverev from an emotional perspective, even if he were to get through it? I mean, it's really interesting, people, that match. It's going to be a marquee first-round match, possibly the best first-round Grand Slam matchup I can remember, to be honest, given the unusual curveball of Nadal being unseeded at the French Open. So that is curious, people. Other candidates, I'm looking at Casper Ruud, so the Norwegian 7th seed. He's made the final here the last couple of years. He's also won a clay court event this year, ATP in Barcelona, 500. Is he primed and ready to claim his first Grand Slam title? I'm looking at him. He is a clay court specialist. I think Ruud will sense an opportunity to really step up and potentially claim that title. Tsitsipas is another one. I mean, he made the final in 2021, lost to Djokovic, having led 2-love in that final. Again, seems at home on the clay, won in Monte Carlo. Possibly he could do some damage, and he's not in that nightmare half of the draw. So you've got Zverev, Djokovic, Nadal in the same half of the draw. Whereas Tsitsipas has landed in the bottom half of the draw. So that's the one with, he's in Alcaraz's quarter. So he could potentially face Alcaraz in a quarter-final or last 16. And then he's also in Sinner's half. But as I've said, with the question marks over those two with fitness, Tsitsipas's prospects do increase, I think, in terms of potentially winning this event. So you're looking at Tsitsipas. Who else? Possibly a Rublev. Rublev is seeded 6, won in Madrid. Medvedev would be an outsider because clays is probably his least favourite surface, but you never know. If he were to really find his game and find that motivation, he could make a run. And you've got Baez of Argentina. He's been doing really well on the clay. Don't know if he can win, but he can maybe make some waves in terms of making his way through the draw. You've got a couple of interesting prospects from America. You've got Taylor Fritz and Tommy Paul, both of whom have had good clay court seasons. So it is fascinating, people, how this one is going to unravel. And for me, the most interesting subplot I feel in the men's compared to the women's. So you've got the women's, it would appear a little bit more predictable as to who may get through, just from the outside looking in, and how results have panned out this season in terms of there's been a theme of which players have been getting to the latter stages of the events. You would expect a certain pattern to emerge in the women's, but in the men's, I'm thinking, this is a really tricky one to call, because I've been listening, guys, absolutely loving Andy Roddick's podcast, Served, and something he said was, when would the last time you would bet your stake on the field, so to speak, over the top three in the bookmakers' odds? So top three in the bookmakers' odds, you've got top 3 or 4 even. You've got, I think Zverev's 4th favourite, but before he won Rome, the 4 favourites were Djokovic, Sinner, Alcaraz and Nadal, in whatever order. I think Alcaraz might have been favourite. But the point being, Roddick was saying that this is the first time he would actually put a punt on the players outside the top 4 because of the question marks about those top 4 going into this tournament. So how's it going to unravel, people? I'm super interested. I'm going to be tuning in. It's a great Grand Slam, this one. I think Australia is my favourite of the 4 slams, but the French would be up there, people, with the US competing for that second spot in terms of the one I enjoy watching. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating, people. I can't wait to see how it unravels. Leave us your comments, people. Before I round off the video, people, I'm going to make a prediction. I think Swiatek for the women is going to win the women's event. In the men's event, I'm going to go with my heart, because I really, really like Casper Ruud as a player and I love his personality. So I'm going to go with Casper Ruud. And I also feel, people, like he's got a chance, given his pedigree on clay, the fact he would appear to be peaking. He's made the last 2 finals at the French Open. It's a long shot, because winning a Grand Slam, not that, I only can make this comment based on the fact I've seen it. It just looks so hard. It just looks absolutely like 7 matches, 5 sets against the best players in the world, vying and really going 100% for this title. It's not going to be easy, but I really hope Casper Ruud can do it, people. He's certainly the one I would like to see win the men's side. Let's see what happens. All right, people, leave us a comment if you have any. I'm really looking forward to the event, and yeah, let's keep a dialogue up about the French Open. All right, people, peace, love.